All right. We made it happen. We made it happen. Welcome back, folks, to an episode of Fire Theft Radio Live. We're not over here. Oh, geez. I got to take that thing off. So, double feed over here. See, we're not good at the live stuff, but we're working these bugs out. And I'm not going to be able to interact much on this live other feed because it's going to be just annoying. But Mav, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right. Ready to talk about some weird stuff.
Yes, indeed. And I mean, you guys already saw the title. We're going to talk about some serious clown business over here. Obviously, I'm pretty sure our guest has heard all of these funny puns, like, "Oh, you're clowning around. Oh, what's going on?" But we're gonna try and avoid all of those obvious jokes and things like that. But I never in my life kind of thought that there would be a connection between clowns and Nephilim. But as soon as I started seeing some of the material, it was just like obvious to me where, oh, wait a minute, there's something more nefarious to this. I mean, just off the bat, if you're a listener of the show Fire Theft Radio, we're always connecting modern culture to the past when it comes to either the Nephilim or ancient past, either Judeo-Christian. But it's I think you, Matt, we just mentioned it, right? Like, it's impossible to be fully disconnected and be, oh, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in anything. And like, if you knew some of the stuff you're practicing or experiencing in the culture today, all of it is connected to something in our ancient past. And it could be the dark side of things or the light side of things, but we don't know that because we don't really look into our past as much, especially into this kind of weird, more I don't know, fringy kind of stuff. And so I don't know, I thought some interesting stuff there. Mav, you got anything before we get this rolling?
I don't. I just want to jump in. I actually before we do, I heard about Paul from the Camp Hermon podcast that you did over there, and then I jumped over and said, actually, I think I've seen some of these clips. So it's sort of funny how everything comes around, and I'm excited to have this conversation. So.
Very well. So without further ado, let's get this ball rolling. I promise I'll let our guest speak as much as possible. He has a lot of interesting material. I've already looked at some of his stuff, so I highly recommend it. But all right, here we go. Oh, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Very good. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Fire Theft Radio. Thanks for coming on, brother.
No. Thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So I believe you were also on, was it Tinfoil Hats with over there with Mr. Tripoli?
Yeah, in October, I think it was now. Yeah, a couple of months ago. I was originally with I talked to the Recluse channel. And he was one of the first guys to have me on, to be honest. Very nervous for that because, like I said, I'd never done a podcast before. So after talking with him, eventually Mark got in touch with me from My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. And I did a talk with him, and he was like, "Mate, I do the bookings for Sam Tripoli's show. You've got to get on his show. He'll love to hear this." And then he got me on Sam Tripoli, and yeah, I'm so quite. I was very nervous for that one because I thought, this is a huge, weird audience that may not understand what I'm saying at all. But actually, it was a really good talk. It was really fun. We had a laugh throughout the whole process, and I left that conversation thinking I didn't say enough because it got cut off, and I had so much more to say. But people loved it. People were happy with it. Everyone, and and apparently really well. Yeah.
They always say leave them wanting more, so
I guess so.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, the obvious question is how did you even stumble upon these connections? We're talking about clowns and Nephilim. Our audience is well aware of Genesis 6, Psalms 82, Psalms 89. the ancient gods, aliens, UFOs. So you don't have to maybe explain so much there, but
Mhm.
so you can feel pretty comfortable with just assuming they know this. And if you don't, folks, know what we're talking about, go back and listen to our early episodes. I mean, we've been doing this for 7, 8 years, and we've been talking about that stuff for a while. So, Nephilims and clowns, like, how did you stumble upon that? What's going on there?
Yeah, well, assuming your audience has a base knowledge of what the Nephilim actually are, the offspring of fallen angels or the Watchers who mated with human women, likely the Daughters of Cain, is where my research seems to have taken me. From that thought process and that experiment on that idea of what would a hybrid between an angel and a human actually look like is kind of my springing off point to kind of try and figure this out, because I was never satisfied with these images you'd see everywhere of Nephilim. Say you googled it or something, and Nephilim artwork or something, you just see these paintings or drawings of these really hench human looking things like that are just huge with massive pecs and big long brown hair and a tan,
Right.
looking like Conan the Barbarian, you know what I mean, but just really really tall. And it's kind of, that wasn't enough for me. I was like, that's not what they would have looked like. That's a very anthropomorphic personification of something, which actually would have looked incredibly psychedelic, because as far as I'm aware, the seraphim angels are fiery flying serpents. They're not quite as simple as, just
Right.
shiny, good looking men. I don't think that's what they
Right.
really were from a basic
Mhm.
standpoint. And, my research again took me down the path that the dragons, shall we call them, or the fiery flying serpents, or the seraphim, were the majority of the ones who mated with these human women. No, I take it that, in the hierarchy of the angelic world, the seraphim are right there next to God, by the throne, singing holy, holy, holy. And I figured, they would be his most trusted confidants to be sent down to watch over his beloved creation, which would have been humanity, as the watchers. And they fell short, So I do believe it was specifically the dragons or the seraphim, which were the ancient gods of that ancient time, where they had a job to
Right.
do but gave into their lusts. And there's many things I like a lot of Gary Wayne's research on this, and his idea of the antediluvian history and that really really ancient age before the Nephilim came. He has a lot of theories about what happened around that time, but I think he was on the money when he said it was this dragon class. And a lot of our secret societies basically are revolving around a veneration of this particular dragon class of angel, these particular types of watchers. And he goes on about the rebellion of Lucifer, and I think it's interesting. He postulates on this idea that there was a pre-Adamic race, or a peoples of day six, as he would call them. And it was those peoples that were originally ruled over by these watchers as kind of like faux gods in a way. And they
Mhm.
hadn't really rebelled by that point or done anything other than do their job, but it got to a point where God chose Adam over their creations, or like a reptilian style creature, perhaps, and that kind of
Mhm.
kicked off this jealousy and rebellion over why did God choose that thing over our thing, and it created this weird reptilian rebellion between the mammal and the reptile, enmity between her seed and your seed, all that sort of stuff started to crop up. So based on all that history, I kind of been researching for years about alternative, contrarian biblical history, and giving these descriptors and these insights into what fallen angels or just angels in general would have looked like. I mean, from the Qumran cave, for example, the Book of Amran describes a vision he had of these two angels that came to him, and describes them specifically as having the face of an adder and the visage of a viper. And these are both the good and bad angel in front of him, the fallen and the normal angel, both look like snakes. It seems to be that they have animalistic features. The living creatures, for example, which is Ezekiel in his vision claimed to have seen, it was a crazy looking chimeric animal hybrid with 4 different heads of all kinds of different animals. They seem to have some kind of animalistic feature towards them, along with wings. And if you look
Yeah.
at nature's color palette, it's pretty psychedelic. They're not, creatures and animals are not boring, bland things most of the time, especially snakes. They're very colorful. So that idea, kind of coupled with that mixing with a human, it basically, to summarize my entire theory, it came to the conclusion that they would have looked something like clowns. And that's,
Yeah, and I was going to go back to the living creatures, because I've heard it stated what you have with those four living creatures. You sort of have those kinds of creation that are sort of listed in different times, maybe not explicitly, but you have the land animals, you have the birds, represented the eagle. You've got these, and the one thing you don't have is a reptilian demonstration, and you don't really see that reptilian representation until you get to Revelation, where you have four living creatures discussed and the dragon discussed, and so you have sort of that there. Do you think there's something there to that reptilian kind is not represented in heaven, but instead is associated with judgment, them being brought down in numbers, those types of things?
I do think the reptilian nature of these, they seem to be our main enemy, humanity's main enemies. It's the running theme, not even through just the Bible, but all fiction, historically speaking, and even in just our modern history and fiction. There's always the war between the reptile and the human of some kind, and I do think it all goes back to this seraphim rebellion. And that, I'm not saying all seraphim angels are bad. That's not the case. Not all
Yeah.
dragons went along with the rebellion. It was a fraction of them.
The biggest I don't know, difficulty is for people that believe in angels or in the spiritual world, or just in general that God created these other beings. They never assume that they don't look like us, that they're different, or that they're maybe very mythological in as far as we understand mythology today. And we just kind of disconnect all of that. And because right here, Leaf Jackson says they're all created by the same creator. That in mind, it's not too far out there that they have an animalistic appearance. I mean, just some of the I don't know, you can say heavenly beings probably is a better term, uh, have the appearance of creatures, of animals, and dragons are scaly or different. It's just all kinds of different things. And so I don't know. There was a lot going on during the Edenic times. I don't think we understand, and maybe even pre-Edenic, as Gary Wayne's research and other researchers kind of use. But and I'm sorry if I missed it. Maybe I'm not paying attention. But like, how are you connecting these things? How did it fall upon like clowns? How did you get there?
Right. So first of all, just to summarize some things you said there very quickly. I'm losing my train of thought there. So we were talking about the look of the angels and how they looked. So I think a lot of people forget that angels are the sons of God. Yes, I believe that's what the scripture of sons of God is referring to when it says in Genesis 6 that the sons of God came upon the daughters of men. They are creations of God himself, but they're not made in his image. We are. It never says the angels were made in God's image. So they do have a distinctly different flavor envisaged to how a human being would look. But I do think in terms of hierarchy of angels, the lower class of angel, they do look very human, as described all throughout the Bible when they had interactions. Obviously, when they went to Sodom and when they went to Gomorrah, for example, and they were surrounding them, saying these beautiful looking men, they can take you, and I do think they can shape shift. I think they're a little bit outside of our ability and perceptions in a weird way. They're heavenly entities. I think they can take on many forms. The dragon being one of the main forms the seraphim would have taken. I had this theory, and I made a video about it, but I think there was something really psychedelic and trippy about the nature of angels and the role they played in creation. I don't think they were just things that floated around the creation and kind of wandered within it. I think they are a part of it in a very weird way. I think they have roles and to play within the creation to make God's creation happen. It's not like they created anything, but they're like a cog in the machine that God has created. And for an angel to leave its allotted place is no trivial matter. Like, for them to move from the position God said you have to remain in, like a star, for example, has to stay in its spot. Well, the wandering stars, it says that they're going to be punished severely for what they've done for leaving their allotted place. You know what I mean? For an angel to leave its spot has detrimental consequences to the very fabric of reality itself. So when the rebellion happened and a third of the angels left their first estate, I think that corrupted creation on a very psychedelic, crazy level. And I don't think we fully can even comprehend or understand the severity of the rebellion in that respect. When you consider that an angel is like, if you have a perfectly functioning watch and you take one cog out, you've caused a serious problem to the whole functionality of that machine. I think that's how creation was affected massively by this rebellious thing. So I think it's a trippy history. I love speculating on these things. I don't have definitive answers, but I do not think it's a joke to talk about this just how serious it was for these angels to leave their first estate first of all, and let alone go ahead and then have sex with human women and make it even worse. I think it's a whole thing.
The book of Jude alludes to that for sure. That they did left their original habitation and
their proper estate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Phrases for it.
I mean, I think it says in the Bible, in Ezekiel's vision, the thrones are holding up the firmament. Like, that's their job. They can't move from that position. It would destroy all of God's creation. You know what I mean? They have serious roles to play in making sure it happens, and it's not like a joke, And I just so that bear that in mind. Now, to get onto how I got this whole clown connection, so I always had this thought process as I was doing my research of what would the Nephilim actually have looked like, because we only have glimpses in the Bible, very small glimpses. We don't get much information from the canon, the 66 book canon, shall we say. You get very little. You can infer what they may have been like in nature from the names and the meanings of the names of the tribes in Canaan. I think Anak, for example, translates to long neck, and the sons of Anak would have been the long-necked ones. You know what I mean? And so we can imply they had elongated features that were bizarre. The Zamzu means are the terrifying ones or the shrieking ones. They had a shrieking, horrible cry, a powerful cry behind them, which wasn't quite human, like a you know what I mean. So we can only get glimpses from these weird descriptors of what they kind of were like. But if we go to outside of biblical texts, you find all of human history is just rife with people contending with these psychedelic looking clown being monsters which ruled over them as kings and rulers in the flesh, and I believe that's where we can find the actual, because I think all of human history is biblical history, whether it's in the canon or not. It's the same story, just from different cultural perspectives. So I made my connection primarily by examining the folk traditional practices of all these cultures around the world who have something called ancestor spirit worship. And to do these rituals, which involve worshipping their ancestors, they dress up in a certain way for the key purpose of reflecting it in the spirit realm in order to be possessed by it. That's their end goal. And they make no secret of it. That's exactly what they want to do. And they tell you that's what we are doing this for. So if you look at the commonality or the common thread between all these cultures on every continent who have the same ancestor spirit worship practice, they dress in very similar ways. They white the face up. They put on some kind of red nose or big red headdress or golden headdress. They paint their face or their skin to be incredibly psychedelically patterned with polka dots, stripes, multicolored lines, all sorts of things. They put animal features on, furs, tufts of hair. They make themselves look like a psychedelic bird monster / lizard thing. That's what they're aiming for every time they do it. And they want to they say, no, I do this to be possessed by the spirits. And they call them their ancestors, but they don't mean grandma and granddad. They mean, that's just our poor English translation of understanding what they're talking about. They're talking about the ancient ones who built their civilizations in the ancient past, the far removed from their current culture ones, the ancient forefathers who created their way of being, which would have been the kings and rulers of the antediluvian, slightly post-diluvian period, which is when the Nephilim were around. You'll find things like headboarding, for example, where they squash infant skulls to flatten out and make it elongated. They're trying to emulate a beauty standard that they look up to and consider powerful or a symbol of power. I believe all of these are just emulations, venerations of, replications of these monsters that did once roam all throughout the humanity and were looked up to as gods and kings and rulers. Someone sent me an image the other day, the practice of adding rings to extend the neck, for example. And it looks like they have really long necks, but then I just described to you that the sons of Anak were described as the long-necked ones. You look at these histories, you can understand, they saw something, they venerated it as power, and then they copied it in order to emulate that power and that image. And that's how I made the connection that they all seem to lean towards dressing something to akin to what we call in the Western world as a clown. Yeah, but to get there, it was a weird journey because I'm not really interested in clowns. I never grew up caring about them. I didn't go to the circus or anything, you know what I mean? I'm not a juggalo. I don't obsess over them or think about them. They've never been a thought of mine in my entire life, really. But I just kept having these weird experiences as I was coming into the conspiracy world. and waking up
Right.
in 2012 to the end of the world stuff, that was my trigger
Right.
point. But you start doing your research, and I found God along the way. I ditched my new age psychedelic exploration Gnostic past, when I went with Christ, and I stuck with that as the truth, and all these answers kept coming to me. But when I decided to abandon my old life, stop taking psychedelics daily and smoking weed every day, you know what I mean, and gave myself over to Christ, I got demonically attacked and oppressed in ways I just wasn't expecting.
Really?
Yeah,
And were you feeling attacked? I mean, this is a different subject, but I'm just curious.
go.
Were you feeling attacked, or were you having any weird supernatural experiences while you were on psychedelics and in your new age world, or did you recognize them as spiritual?
It's no. When you're in it, for me, it was you don't notice the problems because you don't see them as problems at the time. My entire life was basically slowly decaying and becoming a death trap.
Mm,
I was going nowhere. I was stagnating. I was wasting my life, and I wasn't progressing or bettering myself as a human being in any way, shape, or form. I was just going
mm,
further, doing nothing with my life, getting further and further away from being able to achieve anything in my life, not using my time to develop any skills which I would require in the future, not building relationships. I was giving myself over to being high all the time instead, and it's a slow burn that because when you're high all the time, you're always in that I'm in the now type of thing, and you never think
mm.
about the past or the future. You lose yourself in.
Right.
And by the end of university, after being basically doing this for like a good 10 years of my life, I was in this low moment where I was lost. I didn't know where I was going, what my future would be. All my receptors were burnt out. I couldn't produce any happy chemicals anymore. I was in a complete state of just I was at rock bottom. I was heartbroken, lonely, no direction, no future, no prospect of understanding what was going on. I was terrified of the conspiracy stuff that I'd been learning about and the world that I live in. And I didn't know what I had no direction, and I'd been researching the conspiracy Christian angle, but never quite going down it fully because I didn't want to believe that the answer was there. I believed I could find all the answers through all the knowledge and save myself. But I got such a low point where I realized, I need help, and I asked God to help me, and I was born again that day, and things have never been the same since, and all those addictions are gone. I'm now fully sober now. I
Yeah.
finally quit nicotine at the start of this year, but I've been lowering my e-cigarette for the past 3 years to next to nothing anyway, so it's easy enough to get rid of. And it was a long journey, it wasn't easy I couldn't stop everything overnight, but the desire to want to change did come overnight.
Right.
And that's when the demons came. That's when I started to get attacked openly, outright. Until then, they were happy just slowly killing me, and me not realizing
Interesting.
that's what was going on. But as soon
Interesting.
as but as soon as you actually reject them, say I don't want you in my body anymore, you're not using me for your desires and purposes anymore, I am not your vessel, the Holy Spirit can only be in here now, and you kick them out, then they're coming for you. It's like, well, if we can't have you, nobody can. I think that's the kind of attitude, that's how the demons see it. And
Yeah.
there was one moment where literally the room started to spin, darkness came in from the corners of my vision. I was dying. I went paralyzed on the sofa for no reason. Just I was doing nothing, something arbitrary like watching TV with my dog sat next to me, doing nothing at all. I felt like I was dying. Like they were coming for me in that one moment. They're just killing me. They're just literally shutting all my organs down. My brain is turning off. But I managed to say out loud, "Jesus, help me!" And then instantly, back in the room, everything's gone, back up, and I'm like, "What just happened there?" I was terrified at that moment. But the things like this kept happening. I was having sleep paralysis dreams. I had one nightmare where a hat man was chasing me, telling me I owed him something, and he hadn't forgotten that I owed him this thing, and then he came after me, and I swear I almost died in that dream again if I couldn't just wrench myself awake quickly before he got to me. Um, I've been having these weird psychedelic visions as well, which I thought were psychedelic flashbacks, but I did see this giant, enormous jester in the DMT realm. I went back to the DMT realm, which I was very familiar with, so I knew where I was when I ended up going back there completely sober for no reason. It's like,
Mm.
I know where this place is, I know where I am. But this time, I was confronted by a giant who looked like a jester. And he had like fractaled black and white patterned skin, a huge big purple grin smile thing, giant glowing alien eyes, which were like purpley gold, and his head was shaped like spider's legs angling over, and kind of like a jester's cap, but his skull was shaped this way. He was just a monster. It was a giant clown jester monster in this DMT realm. And I'd already done enough history and knowledge to know people see jesters when they take DMT. So that was my first clue. The Hatman encounter was my second clue, but the more I lost my addiction, stopped smoking cannabis, stopped drinking, didn't do any drugs, focused on myself, focused on the word, these things disappeared slowly, and I stopped having these horrible moments, and I haven't really had one since the jester vision. And my life's a lot better now. But that kind of experience doesn't leave you though, and
That's wild. Yeah.
yeah.
Matt, you had a question or something to bring up?
You mentioned something in your own sort of flow of conversation there.
Go.
You mentioned beauty standards, and that kind of stuck out to me and it reminded me of a question that I wanted to ask and I had forgotten.
Mhm.
And so, Queen Elizabeth, not two, but Queen Elizabeth I. I wanted to pull up some of these images of Queen Elizabeth. So that idea and the concept of the beauty standard at that time was the painted white face, right? And that's where we get some of those modern concepts of whiteness and what that means. That actually goes all the way back to these concepts, right? But we also know that Queen Elizabeth, she wore wigs, so this was on purpose. This look, the white painted flat white face and the red hair. Is this also maybe keying back into some of these things and trying to make them more of a beautiful thing, a desirable thing, more than a scary thing?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe
serpent on her arm.
Yeah, it's a dragon, I think, isn't it? From the looks of it. Yeah. The thing is that most of the royal families all throughout the earth believe themselves to be the descendants of the Nephilim. They do. That's just not even like it's not even a secret. It's very well known. They consider themselves to be of the house of the dragon. They are of this royal divine right to rule. We have angel blood inside of us type people. That's why they believe they have that divine right. So when they try to emulate or live up to the standards of the demons, they're probably well in communication with, and they know what they look like. What she used to wear was a thing called Venetian Serus, which came from Venice. It was actually a heavily lead-based paint that was killing her. I think it likely did kill her. That was probably what it came down to at the end from severe lead poisoning. It took a long time for that to change to a more emollient-based, oil-based one rather than lead-based to get away from that grease paint effect. A lot of early clowns actually suffered from the same problem. In France specifically as well, and in Italy, but they realized it was the face paint killing them eventually, and they switched to something a bit more healthy. But it goes to show, mess around and find out, isn't it? You play with demons, you get burnt type of thing. But I do think it's not just the face paint and the red hair, which is a clear emulation of Nephilim features. It's the clothing they wear, the frills around the neck, for example, that Victorian frill, which is shown to be a symbol of high standards and aristocracy. It's actually a reptilian frill. It's a distinctly reptilian feature. You see there with the puffy red polka dot, white, red, and polka dot arms, and that one at the top corner. It's polka dots are quite a clownish thing as well, but it's a reptilian skin feature. There's always a reference to the psychedelic nature of reptiles.
Doesn't look a little It the Clownish, It the Clown.
Yeah.
Did you see the new It series, the new It movies?
I think I saw the first one. I didn't see the revelation where they're older. I haven't seen that second one.
Okay.
I saw the original. I did see the originals though. The TV series from the early days, the 90s. And I actually read the book as a kid as well. So.
Well, I don't know if the book or the TV series, things like that, mentioned it, but the second movie, it took a direction where I was like, has anyone else, like, I mean, except for probably be us in the conspiracy world, like, are you guys seeing this? What they did was they explained the origins of it and who he was, and they described him as a fallen star, and they described him as someone who was, this ancient god, seen as gods, and it survives on human sacrifice. And it gets a little bit into the kind of adrenochrome stuff where it's like, I got to swallow this child while he's scared, and that's why he terrifies them first before he eats them. And if people don't know what that is, I mean, I didn't really want to touch it. I didn't want to get, like, I don't know, flagged or canceled, especially. I was just like, whatever. So a lot of people are talking about adrenochrome. So, but it just surprised me because it was very overt. Like we mentioned on the show a lot, that movies are no longer occult; they're just overt, and they just tell you what it is. I think Enoch mentioned it earlier. There's more evil. The veil is thinning between the darkness, and you can just see these things really coming up.
Let's go ahead and read that comment real quick, just so that everyone listening can get it. Enoch says, "Are we seeing the zebra pattern, the clownish pattern on these?" He's probably referencing something that we talked about at that point. What appears to be human hosts or Nephilim hosts manifest in the darkness, increasing on the earth. Is the veil thinning? Sort of a question. So are these becoming more prevalent? Are the patterns, some of these connections, maybe that red hair, maybe the white, but that stripish kind of pattern, which is all over all the clown stuff, even clown fish. That's why it's identified that way. Is that because maybe there's something coming?
Well, if we want to talk about that, we'll talk about to summarize the end of my journey. You know, I had all these visions and had these things. Then the 2016 clown sightings happened around the end of this period for me.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and that's what that was my first clue that something was going on here to do with clowns and the Nephilim. So I already knew by this point. I was well versed in the occult symbolism and the knowledge that of the secret societies and how they are orchestrated and operated in the world. And it was clear to me, first of all, the media was hyping up this event to no end. They were putting it everywhere. Every small news station and even national news stations across countries, across continents were talking about this happening in their area. And I thought to myself, the media would not show this unless they wanted us to see it. They don't show anything by accident on the mainstream controlled news outlets. They do not, okay? It's all orchestrated. The clown must, I thought to myself, the clown must be a symbol to the initiated. It must mean something to them for them to make such a big deal out of this. Something so trivial and stupid and silly. They're putting a spotlight on it on purpose. You know, that was my first thought process, and I'd already had enough knowledge from all this previous connecting and thought processes about seraphim angels mixing with women. What would that have looked like? Seeing jesters in the DMT realm, and things just kind of clicked into place for me. And I thought to myself, clowns have something to do with demons and Nephilim. They're linked explicitly, and they're showing them on the news right now as like a message of some kind. They're trying to say something. Maybe the Nephilim are returning or something like that. Is what I thought. It's like a message for the initiated to see. Oh, we've thinned the veil enough for the manifestations of the Nephilim to begin coming back into our world, and now they're on street corners and scaring people, and people are sighting clowns everywhere. What they're actually talking about is prepare for the future. We may start seeing more manifestations of the Nephilim coming back to our realm, as it was in the days of Noah type of stuff. So shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man? We're kind of in that realm now where the Nephilim are going to return. They're coming back from the other side of the veil where they currently are as disembodied spirits. We're going to start opening up channels and portals for them to get back here, and we're going to start seeing them positioning themselves back into places of power like they once were, just before the flood, as it was in the days of Noah. So I kind of made all these links together, and that's what set me off. That's what started the series, and that's where all the connections just started flowing. And I realized, actually, this is very serious. Like, the clown actually is a purposefully created symbol to represent the Nephilim, and is also used as a costume by secret societies to channel demons without the public noticing that that's what it's actually for. It's an occult symbol. We're not supposed to know that's what it's used for. We're supposed to just think it's something fun and innocent for the children. But they know, the Shriners, who all dress like clowns and have their own clown sects and are part of Freemasonry and the ancient continuation of the serpent worship cults from the antediluvian age, they know what it's for. They know the practices all these ancestor spirit cultures around the world use the costume for. You wear the thing to be possessed by the thing, to channel the thing, and the clown is just their Western created version of the same thing done in all these other cultures around the world that have been doing it openly for centuries.
Yeah. Is it sort of like, you see it on Discovery Channel where the birds that are trying to attract a mate, they fluff up their feathers and they do a dance to try to attract that same thing. It almost feels like that. It almost feels like they're going to dress up, they're going to do these things, they're going to do these rituals to try to draw in and to attract.
Well, you mentioned earlier about it and the whole, charging the blood with that particular chemical in order to get that energy from them, through fear. That's what it does. It causes fear in its victims first to fill the blood with adrenaline, so then they can eat the child and gain the powers from the adrenaline in the blood. Well,
Yeah.
Shriners dress like clowns and go to children's hospitals where children are in their last dying moments of life. A clown either creates extreme laughter or extreme fear in whoever it comes towards. There's one or two options. No one's. I don't know anybody who's indifferent to clowns when they see one. You know what I mean? Either likely you're going to be scared. More uncommon, you might actually think one's actually quite funny. You know, that's rare. Studies have been done. Children are actually mortified by clowns. It's like 1 in maybe 200 that actually likes clowns. They're the outlier. They're not the norm. Okay, they don't count. They do not represent children. Okay, that one child who thinks clowns are funny. The majority of children are terrified of them, and studies have been done, and it's proven. Yeah, we don't know why we associate clowns with children. Children don't like them whatsoever. But if you
There
imagine,
has to be
well, if you think
some.
about it, yeah, if these secret societies are dressing like clowns and going to dying children for the purpose of eliciting some kind of energy from them, a fear from
Right.
them, well,
Right.
if they are channeling a demon in that moment, then the demon within that person is feeding off that fear who's channeling them. And if you are a secret society member who works with these demons, then why wouldn't you dress like one so it can come in your vessel, go and scare the hell out of a child so the demon within you can feed off it? You're kind of helping them in a way, and these giant, these hospitals are like loosh farms for demons, basically, where these clowns go in and terrify them. And I think it's something instinctual why we're scared of clowns, why this fear even exists, called coulrophobia. It's because there's something built into us as humanity. It's a predator response. These things used to eat us. These things were roaming around, eating human beings and subjugating us, throwing us in the air at a moment's notice. We were in fear of them. We had no power. They were our predators. They were true predators, of humanity. And you don't collectively, instinctually in your DNA forget something like that. And I think humanity is naturally repulsed by the clown for this very reason, because it represents something we remember, you know.
And
Yeah.
when was the last time in some pop culture thing that the clown was a hero or the clown was a good guy? Clown was always a bad guy. They try to make it ironic. Oh, it's ironic that this child thing, this children's sort of image is the bad guy. They try to make it ironic, but it doesn't seem ironic if the first thing isn't true. Is there actually any kind of pulp culture-y sort of thing that where they're the good guy? I mean, even Ronald McDonald, like he's beckoning you to go eat gross food, if you could call it food. Like there's no like good representation of a clown.
Not anymore,
And
no.
there's
Sorry,
very few.
I'm saying John Wayne Gacy kind of ruined that for everybody, for all future clowns. He did. He did. He actually did, though, and that was it. From that moment, it was solidified that clowns are actually something with a negative connotation. Prior to that, you had Bozo the Clown in his show, which was kind of like Krusty the Clown was a rip off of that in The Simpsons. It was a comedy version,
Right.
But and even then, circuses were still a relatively fun thing for the family in the 60s and 50s and 40s. But you find rolling into the 80s, you had the modern. I mean, we talk about the 2016 clown sightings. Well, in 1981, Boston had their own issue going on with clown sightings that actually started to spread all across America at the same time period as well. And people dressed like clowns were driving around in vans trying to kidnap children and lure them into their vans. And families were reporting this en masse in 1981 all across the country, and it became the phantom clown sightings. That's what they became known as during that period of time, because they couldn't find them. No one could find them, and people were like, "Oh, you're just making it up." But it was like mass hysteria everywhere. Everyone was talking about, "I've seen these clowns. They're waiting outside of our schools in vans. Like, you have to get them." And then when the police get there, they're gone, and they can't find any trace. And it's kind of like, what's going on here? So it's not the first time. And then everyone said, "Oh, well, in hindsight, everyone's been saying it was just some kind of stunt, because it had just come out and everyone was all about, it at that time." But the thing is, the book, wasn't released until 4 years later. So it has nothing to do with the book, It.
It always seems like there's got to be some sort of clown, like the clown of the hour, the clown of the time, the clown of the moment that's sort of in there. So it's either Joker or it's, like I was saying, Ronald McDonald for a while is sort of this prevalent figure. And
Yeah.
you even get creepy there with the whole Ronald McDonald house sort of thing for children who are suffering, which honestly, that organization does some great things. Like personal experience. They do some great things, but that showcase where it's that one up front, it always seems like there is a pop culture or front of mind sort of clown image that's always around. I think the Joker has been that for years and years and years, and it just keeps coming back every decade. There's a new Joker, there's a new something, whether it's an animated or live action.
Yeah, my recent episode of the Nephilim Look Like Clowns was just about this. It's about the past, I could go on forever, so I just capped it the last 10 years. Let's just look at the last decade alone, 2014 to now, okay? And you'll find this past 10 years has been prolific with clown information and films and media. It's everywhere right now. It's actually quite mind-boggling just how much they're pushing the clown on us just in the past 10 years alone. It's creepy. It's strange. I mean, 2014, they released a film called Clown, which is literally about somebody who puts on the costume of a clown and is therefore possessed by a demon of a reptile monster called a cloyne. Okay, it's literally my entire theory in this old film from 2014 that I knew nothing about until literally a few years ago, like not that even that long ago, actually. At the start of this year, it's the first time I heard about this, and it's kind of they've been telling us for a long time. They've been telling us for a very long time what the truth of the matter is, and I've kind of just started to uncover all of it. It's everywhere. Like it is about the same thing, an interdimensional entity that shapeshifts, that has like an insectoid, weird, monstrous, wide mouth, grin form that manifests physically as a clown in order to feed every 27 years. And even the number 20 every 27 years is a reference to the Saturn's cycles of when Saturn is in your own house and all this type of thing. That's where Club 27 comes into it, and it's all connected to the occult.
You see that in movies for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if you start to break apart the characteristics of Nephilim or Nephilim spirits, which are the real demons, and occult rituals, and then compare all of the things that you've seen clowns express in our media, the connections become kind of endless. Because I feel personally, when I saw the Dark Knight and I saw the Joker, the representation of what he was, for me, it was like, this is a chaos ritual. This is chaos magic right here. Like he is the representation of chaos, of anarchy, and very cunning. And you break apart this, for example, clowns can be deceptive. This is the plan. Look at me. This is what I'm presenting to you. They're almost magicians as well. They have magic. They're confusing you with something else. Look at this, and then really what's happening is this other thing, right? And so that's what the Joker was doing in the Dark Knight. Like, he was always a step ahead of everyone, presenting something that wasn't really it. And then in the Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, it was like completely different, and it was like this acceptance of, like, I want to really feel bad for this character and accept the enemy as your friend, like he's just a normal person kind of thing. And he does this whole, and what, in my opinion, possession ritual when he dances in front of a mirror and he becomes the Joker. He's doing this thing, and of course it was on a black and white floor, the checkered floor. And so there's all of these symbols within these movies where people are they're becoming this other person, and it's all related around clowns. And then there's like obvious possessions that we don't really think about, and they're related to masks, like clowns, like The Mask and Jim Carrey, The Mask, where he literally gets possessed by this ancient deity, and he's very clownish. He does magic. He does all these different things. And again, you can go, you start thinking back and you see all of these things. Clowns are deceptive. They know magic. Jesters, they're comedic, but they're also like, they can do tricks. And it's like this whole thing. I mean, it sounds like a demon to me when you know what they're up to and what they kind of do. All of those characteristics can be embodied in a demon or a Nephilim spirit, these ancient gods. And of course, that is how they got people to worship them and be false deities in the ancient past. So I just, this clown business is definitely something. When I'm thinking, as soon as you mentioned this whole, oh, you remember all the clown stuff, I'm like, God, you just remember the fear that everyone. I was young, a lot younger, and I remember everyone's like, dude, this is crazy. I hate clowns more than ever. And it just became this fear-based thing, very much Monsters Inc. style. You know, everyone's feeding off the fear. These occult businesses, occult people in charge are really pushing this fear propaganda. So
Yeah.
it's blowing my mind, man. You said you were on the show and you had some stuff you wanted to share with Sam Tripoli's, but you just ran out of time. I like to ask this question a lot. Is there, and it fits with the question that, that you just said, like the phrase that you said, is there something that you wish you could share about this subject that you never really get to share? And because it turns into different conversations, we always derail conversations. It's just a conversation here. So, is there something you're like, dude, I really need to get this across, but I hardly get a chance to do so, and it's
Yeah,
about this.
the one thing I never really get a chance to get to, because even in the order of my book, this is the last few chapters where I talk about the mainstream media and how it's used today for the purposes of channeling, how we use the image of a clown. And the one thing I'd like to point out the most, which I find fascinating in my own work, which I've yet to go too deep into, but I have a bit of knowledge around examples and ideas. But I'm going to get way deeper into this eventually, because right now, where my book process is, I'm really into the histories of like the 1700s, the 1800s, the first circuses as well, and all this type of stuff, and where the costume came from originally, and how it came through the comedic art movement. The clown has always been linked with theatre. It's always been linked with performance arts. Okay, that's that's how it got introduced into our world. So first of all, I'm going to very quickly summarize the history here. If anyone wants to know more details, I've covered it in. I don't know how much time we have because what we are now 40. Are we going for an hour today? How long are we going for?
No real
Okay,
hard
right.
stop. We're just talking.
Yeah, so I'm going to try and quickly explain why we have a clown today, first of all. Like, how did that even happen? Where does it come from as a Western phenomenon? Okay, so comedic art movements was something that came out of the Dark Ages, predominantly through the 1600s. Okay, that's when it became popularized. The comedic art was a traveling troupe of mainly Italian performers that came out from the collapse of Rome in the 500 AD. They had to travel all throughout Europe because they weren't allowed to perform in Rome anymore because of the rise of the Catholic Church and the stamping down of performance arts because it was considered something of the devil. So this roaming troupe of Italian performers traveled all throughout Europe, as far as Russia as well, basically putting on quick, improvised shows with stock characters. Throughout that 1,000 year period, coming to the 1600s, they had solidified their stock characters. The rich old man, the daughter of the rich old man, the military man, the servant of the rich old man, and this other weird character called Harley Quinn was introduced into the later editions around the 1500s. Okay, coming out. It was quite a new edition, but they had picked it up from examining this popular character everywhere, all in every European culture. They had this thing called a wild man tradition. It didn't matter where you go. You can go to Portugal, all the way down across to Romania. They all had the same tradition. They would dress up like these crazy, colourful, hairy beasts with huge, wide, teethy grins and horns. And then they would have a crazy party where they would get absolutely smashed. And then they would fast after that period. Okay? Massive excess and then a period of fasting. And the character they would dress up as was the Wild Man, a Nephilim creature, basically. It's their ancestor spirit veneration culture. That's the Europeans' version of it. It's older than time itself. If you actually type in the cookery, so KUK, it's either URI or ERI, but it's Bulgarian. Cookery, yeah. That's the knife, so it's ERI then, not URI. Yeah. Cookery tradition. Just type in Bulgaria next to it, and it'll come up with what you need. There it is. Yes, ERI. Yeah, cookery. So this is their version of the Wild Man tradition. Still happens today. It's actually one of the most comprehensive, still as it used to be traditions. It's barely changed, but they dress up like this basically. And this is what a Harley Quinn is based on. This is where the Harley Quinn character came into the Commedia dell'arte. Type in Portugal. Let me just quickly get it up on my screen so I can get the name of this. The Katos, Ceretos. So Katos, Ceretos, Karetos. Yeah. So this is their version. Yeah, this is their version of the thing. Is it not coming up? Kratos.
I'll find it. You keep talking, I'll find it.
Yeah, that is how you spell it. So I don't know why it's not coming up. Katos Wild Man, Kratos Festival, something like that. Kratos. I might be pronouncing it wrong.
And autocorrect the two cerritos, which just means hills.
Yeah.
Let me just. It's Cereto. Kratos.
ETO.
One R Eto. Kratos.
Yeah.
Is it not coming? I have no idea why it's not coming up for you guys. It literally is. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. Let me just find it myself. Kratos, Portugal. Yep, it's come up for me straight away. Ceretos, Portugal. Kratos, Portugal, and let's go on images, and it's so Care TOS. Caretos.
That's right. You keep on going. I'll find it.
Is it really not coming up for you guys? Can I share with you guys on here? I think I can, can't I?
You should be able to.
Share screen.
Yeah, and then the present.
Ugh.
Yeah, let's see it.
It wants me to accept or something. I don't know what's going on here. Like, yes,
Yeah, okay.
Chrome, screen sharing. I'll use my fingerprint later. Okay, it's not working for me. But yeah, I don't know why. But yeah, I don't know why it's coming up. Caretos. Karetos, Portugal. It's extremely popular, happens every year around the Lent period, massive festival, their version of the Wild Man tradition, and they are extremely psychedelic in the way they do it, but it's the same tradition as you find in Bulgaria. It's identical. There it is, that's what they wear. That's their version of the same thing.
It's Katos, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they burn an effigy of a giant version of it at the end, and this represents the devil. They make no secret of that. There's another one, the Lazarus, next to it, the one where they're wearing white, and they wear the devil horns. If you just scroll down a little bit, you see that one.
Right,
That's a neighboring town. That's their version of doing the exact same
It's
thing.
not creepy at all.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and they're always associated with bells, big multicolored fur patterned clothing. It represents the demon, the devil, the devil character. And what they do is they embody that character for one night, do loads of crazy, excessive, horrible stuff, highly sexually charged stuff, alcoholic inducing, drug inducing, ritualistic stuff while possessed by the demon, and then they let it go and fast. That's their yearly veneration ritual of something ancient, the ancestor spirits, you know.
And it sounds like Fat Tuesday and Lent.
It's all linked together with that. All the timing's the same. Yeah, a lot of these cultures got Catholicized throughout Europe, you know, and got linked with these pagan traditions, got linked with Catholic traditions, and it becomes this big thing. But you'll find actually all throughout Europe, this is a thing. The Wild Man is everywhere. They all have their own version of this, okay? So what the Commedia dell'arte did was invent a new stock character and put it into their shows called Harley Quinn, who was named after Helikins, which is the French version of the Wild Man. It's from this specific story that they have from the 11th century, where a monk claimed to see Helikins and his band of roaming demons going through his village, and basically he's a giant with a club, and is covered in hair, and basically has this little band of merry demons that follow him around, basically, and he causes havoc wherever he goes. So Helikins is where Harlequin gets its name. It is also mixed in with the Italian name of Arlecchino, which comes out of the Bologna region of Italy, and that character is based off of Dionysus, other Mediterranean gods like what's his name, Mercury with his caduceus and his staff, Dionysus with his thyrsus with the pine cone on the end, his staff. You got Helikins, the giant wild man with his big club over his shoulder. So Harlequin is this psychedelic looking monster thing with a club, which is the staff. And he can do acrobatic tricks like backflips, and it looks like he's flying on the stage. He's so fleet of foot and amazing. And he plays the demon character. Yeah, and this is who he's based off of. This is where it comes from. So literally, the first insertion of the first jester ever into theatre was based off of the Wild Man, which is based off of the Nephilim. So it literally is a direct representation of Nephilim creatures.
It's reminding me of Genesis 6 conspiracy book. There was an obvious attempt of these fallen gods, watchers, Nephilim spirits, taking over the seven sacred sciences and they're taking over art here in a very obvious way.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's been going on forever. It's one of those things where just a reminder to folks, you being connected to some spiritual past, whether it's pagan or Judeo-Christian, it's not possible for you to disconnect
Mhm.
from that stuff. Even if you're like, oh, I'm a science man. Well, guess what CERN is doing?
Yeah.
Okay. Guess what all of these why are we naming all of our rockets after gods, and our planets after gods? It's
It's
it's inescapable.
it's funny actually when CERN started first doing its thing. That's when the clown sightings happened in 2016, same time.
I was going to ask you that
Yeah.
sooner. I was going to ask you that because the whole idea is if we're opening up these portals through our scientific experiments, quote unquote scientific experiments, you would expect a lot of different things to start happening during that time. And I do believe not just clowns, but there was a lot of sightings in the areas of CERN where people started seeing a lot of mythological sightings of werewolves, their ancient deities of the that ritual that they did before they opened it, and it's like all of these like pagan god
Mhm.
visions people had. It was like opening up a portal. It reminded me of a scene from Hellboy where they literally opened up a portal to get Hellboy into our world, and using blood sacrifice,
I
and
think
it's just so much there where I'm like, dude, this stuff has been happening for
oh
thousands
yeah.
of years, and it's just re-enchanted in a different way.
I think the Gothard tunnel opening happened around the same time as well, and that ritual was
Mhm.
literally wild men coming out of the portal that they just opened.
Right. Yeah.
So it's the same story. I think they have done something. I mean, I think the whole idea of pushing things like the Joker in the media, for example, today is to popularize up until a Halloween period the idea of people dressing like the famous new clown idol. It's always the Joker that gets pushed, or some clown serial killer gets pushed. I think the Terrifier clown is the most one of the popular ones this year because Terrifier 2 came out, who's like an extremely murderous, brutal clown serial killer in the film. So brutal, in fact, people have passed out in cinemas watching the second one. Apparently, it's really gory and disgusting and just horrible shock horror. But he's Art
Mm.
the Clown. He's called. He's this black and white patterned clown. And again, it makes people when these films come out, it's always just before Halloween, and they think, oh, we're spooky season. Why wouldn't they bring it out around Halloween? But what they're actually trying to do is get people ready to dress like it during that period of Samhain, which the Celtics understood was when the veil is thinnest between our realm and the spirit realm. It's
Right.
Samhain. If you can get people dressed like clowns in time for Samhain, you can get people ready to be channeling unknowingly demons. Basically,
Yeah.
it's opening
There,
portals.
and there are people who would say, "Oh, then we shouldn't do anything with Halloween." But it almost sounds as though they succeeded in creating a cultural event that is the perfect mask
Hmm.
for all of the events. Now you can travel from site to site for like 2 or 3 weeks, all dressed up as something horribly grotesque, and no one even bats an eye anymore.
Hmm.
It's just this massive cover for something. Because I know, like, little kid that wants to dress up like a pirate and just play around, like that feels so innocent, but
Hmm.
what better cover than to have everyone be used to everyone dressing up in horrifying things for weeks on end. There are people who start doing this kind of stuff in October.
Be dressed like Nephilims and ancient gods, pretty much without even knowing
But
it.
you would think you're just dressed like a clown, which is fun, right?
Right.
It's just a bit of innocent
Right.
fun. But this is
Right.
this is another thing as well. And so the entertainment industry has always been linked with the clown, and this is the point I was trying to get to. So the clown, first of all, like I said, Camille Delart's Harley Quinn. The clown character comes from the same show, but if you type in a Pedrolino 1700s or something like that, Pedro Lino, as it sounds, this is with the first clown. This is the clown as we first had it in the Camille Delart's. This is where the character first comes from, and you'll find it's nothing like we have today. It's not even the same thing. Like it's not even close. Pedrolino wore an incredibly boring, plain white, loose servant garb. Nothing special. Okay, you can get pictures of it up. Just boring, plain white. Nothing. There he is. That's the clown. That's the first clown. When Harlequin was first introduced, that's what the clown looked like. That's the servant of the rich old man. Okay,
Mm.
so as it developed through those 200 years up until the 1800s, France kind of developed a sad sack clown, like you see there, Poirot with the red, with the black pom poms, with the face paint. But he was a loser. He was like everyone laughed at his expense because he was so pathetic and couldn't get the
Mm.
girl. The girl wanted Harlequin, didn't want him, you know. Harlequin was the demonic, evil, cheeky character who waved his staff around like it was a penis, just, you know what I mean, like poking people with the backside. He was really rude and crude and demonic. He could change the scene by slapping his stick, the slapstick. He had magic powers. He was a demon. That's the point. But then as time went on into the 1800s, up into Britain with the pantomimes, he became something else. He became like a boring, doting, lovesick fool who was always just chasing after the daughter of the rich man Columbine. And he lost that edge. He didn't really have that edge anymore, you know. He developed into this fine-looking, tight leotard, ponce, fancy dandy lad of about town rather than the evil, demonic, hairy wild man he once was. His mask wasn't the hairy beast mask anymore. He became like a sleek Venetian mask, you know. And you can see progression of Harley Quinn throughout the centuries, and you can see it change, you know. He didn't always wear a tight garb like that. He used to wear a really loose patchwork thing full of tufts of hair originally, but he became this thing here, like a very fancy, a kind of fancy image, you know, of Harley Quinn. So there was kind of like a hole in the whole process, like a void needed filling. Who's going to be the demonic, cheeky character now if it's not going to be Harley Quinn? So they kind of made a switch, and it happened around the time period of the 1800s when Joseph Grimaldi was on stage, and he kind of was a really great performer. People loved him, you know, and he was just making his breakthrough on stage for the first time. His father was a great performer before him. People knew who he was. He was a known entity. He just embodied the clown so perfectly, and he made it his own, and it became this more demonic, cheeky character. So to kind of match this, there was a switch in costume, and that Pedrolino costume you saw, which was boring, plain, and white, which is the servant of the rich man, became what it is today. And the person who did that, who made that change, don't forget the costume hasn't been changed in hundreds of years. It's a big deal. You know, it was a big deal to change the costume of a clown. Who's ever heard of such a thing? You know, it was, for the time, it was like, but we've always done it this way. You know, why would you change it now? And he changes it to the most psychedelic looking crazy monster you've ever seen in your entire life. Look up like 1800s clown costume. It's nuts. It's more terrifying than what we were today, right? It's just shockingly scary. And this was it. This set the new standard from this day on. And the person who made this change was called Charles Dibdin. He was the son of an extremely prolific Freemason and music writer, songwriter, theatre writer, performer of the day. He was like a music industry mogul, a huge deal in the music industry of the day, Charles Dibdin Sr. His son, no, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, did a costume change when he took over the theatre where Joseph Grimaldi was working, this superstar, and dressed him like this. When he used to dress like Pedrolino, like I showed you earlier, this boring white garb. Where the hell did you get the inspiration to suddenly make them dress like this? Where does that come from? It's so incredibly far removed from the original thing, you know. It's and they never talk about where it comes from. Well, it's clear if you look into it, it's clear where it comes from. They had a lot of ties to India. During this time, it's when the East India Company was getting its foothold there, the British colonization of India, you know. And a lot of people, a lot of British people, especially rich, influential British people, were traveling back and forth to Calcutta and living there, you know, and soaking in the Hindu philosophies and religions, you know, and the iconographies. And they brought back with them the image of a Kalasungsang demon or a Rakshasa demon. They brought it back with them, and they dressed this character of Pedrolino, the clown, like a demon to fill in the new role, which was replacing Harlequin, who was also originally modelled after the European demon, with the clown. And the switch was made. Clown would now be the demonic role, and he was dressed up to look like a Hindu demon specifically.
There you go.
There you go, yeah.
It just connect. I mean, that opens up a whole nother set of questions now.
Well, get
And
this, guys. I only just discovered this for myself after I made all these connections. Someone sent me a random message saying, "Oh, check out season 2, episode 6 of Supernatural. It's about a killer interdimensional clown entity." And when they're looking into where it comes from, this particular demon, some woman says it's a Rakshasa demon. From Hindu mythology. She actually says it in the thing. And I didn't know any of this until like 2 weeks after I make my own connection. Somebody, and this was in like 2006, they made that episode. You know what I mean? They made it. years
A little
ago.
bit of the history, and I think it's also important the etymology of names, the words used to describe these clowns, like you said, Harley Quinn, and where that came from,
Mhm.
and you said it was more, what is it,
Helikins, based
Helicon.
after
And
the
I
French
wouldn't be
version. Yeah.
surprised if it's connected to, because where we get the word hell from is
Oh
from
yeah.
Helen, Helena, and all that stuff,
Oh
and
yeah.
there's obviously probably some connections there, but you mentioned music, and Mav, you brought this up.
Hmm.
The official song that we know these days that is used to intro a clown, that it sounds goofy and stuff like that, but I think Mav, you're the one that said that when you looked it up, it's actually not meant. It's actually a very
Oh,
serious song. It's
yeah,
not.
it's the title of that song is Entry of the Gladiators. It's meant to be this really powerful, triumphant sort of thing. The warriors enter the stadium, and what we get is now. I mean, at the time, I don't know. It would be interesting to hear someone or from that time be like, "Oh, yes, this is the most triumphant sound for entering warriors," and it's turned into clowns. Like we
Hmm.
think of it and we think whimsy and insanity. In case someone wants to hear, we can this. I don't know if you could hear it. Could you hear it?
Yeah, you could hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that sound. It's like it's supposed to be this triumphant kind of thing, and it's now become just the weird whimsy of clowns entering into the circus.
Hmm.
And so it's almost like a circumvention, and it goes along with what you were saying. This character, those established characters from the theater, they're this one character that basically was usurped. He was overtaken by something else,
Hmm.
right? Whether it was this entity or whatever that it's supposed to represent, it overthrew the original picture and became something different, which I don't know, maybe at the time that totally changed what some of those established stories had been.
Hmm.
You now change that character. Now does that overthrow all of these other storylines and all these other thoughts and things? Like I don't know. I don't know what those would have been, but to take an established character and to change it over that way had to have some sort of cultural effect.
Yeah, well, it was like I saw that switch over from the clown Harlequin being replaced by the clown as just an attempt to repopularize the demonic within theatre, because Harlequin stopped being so demonic. He became more human throughout the centuries, and they needed to introduce a new demonic character, so they hijacked Pedrolino and turned him into the clown. And what the clown became was the cheeky demonic character who would go around poking fun at everybody and causing chaos and mayhem. I mean, a pantomime at the Harlequinade at the end of the pantomime was literally just 2 hours of straight Looney Tunes chase scenes. It was just Harlequin steals the daughter of the rich man and runs away. The clown and the rich man chase after them, and that was the whole show for 2 hours. Just
With
crazy,
yakety sax playing and
yeah,
it's just
crazy,
yeah.
wacky antics just to get the daughter back, and for Harlequin to snatch the girl, And the clown played his role as like his version of the clown was like not a very good servant and didn't really care. Like he was kind of he was always just having fun with it. He didn't actually care whether he got the daughter back or not, type of thing. You know what I mean? But along the way, he'd have some fun while doing it, which was cause torture and mayhem to everybody around him, basically.
Right.
And Joseph Grimaldi really popularized this clown. His performances were so great, so prolific in the minds of those who witnessed it that it became the cultural standard from then on of what clowning should be and how they should dress. He popularized the image, and then it became what we have today based off of his work. So,
Right.
and if you think about it, the Freemason was involved in that early moment. The son of a Freemason was sent to a theater, took over the theater by virtue of his second name. He was a Dibdin. Of course, he's going to get to run the theaters. You know what I mean? His father's the most famous musician of the time. It's like whatever. So it was nepotism at its finest. But the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You know what I mean? And Charles Dibdin Senior actually was the first person to coin the phrase circus. He invented the name circus. He worked with someone called Charles Hughes, who was a student of I can't remember his name now. This general who started his first equestrian Like he didn't call it a circus; he called it like an equestrian amphitheater or something like. It was horse tricks. He would ride around in a circle on a horse and do backflips and handstands on top of the horse. Well, his students went away from him and basically created just across the road his own circus where he did the same thing. It became his rival, and he teamed up with Charles Dibdin, and they called it the Royal Circus. Charles Dibdin introduced that name, circus, to describe a ring-based performance involving horses and clowns. Okay, so Freemasons have literally been a part of this since the very first inception of the circus and the clown. They have not been separate from it, and then you'll find throughout history from there they travelled to America, started the big top circuses, which were travelling circuses. And then you'll find it was relatively quiet for a long time until about 1870s, 1880s, when P.T. Barnum got involved. And he was basically a charlatan billionaire. Right? He wasn't like these old. He wasn't a performer, to put it that way. He was just a very rich guy who saw a lucrative opportunity, and he actually made his money putting on hoaxes in his museum. He would pretend he had a mermaid, and he would display it on as his great curiosities in his thing, and people from all over the world would come to see the mermaid that he had, and it was basically a monkey's head sewn onto a fish body or something like that.
Yeah.
And he also pretended he had a giant at one point. Someone in New York had claimed they'd uncovered a giant's body and then sold it. He claimed he was the guy who bought it when he didn't. He just made a fake body and put it on display. And he actually got sued for that, by the original person who bought the real body, supposed real body. They say it was a hoax. We don't know. Considering what we research, maybe they actually uncovered a real body at that time. Who knows?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
they claim, the official narrative is based on that hoax. Barnum made his own hoax and put the giant up. Okay, but then the original person who bought the real giant says, "You're stealing my limelight. Everyone's coming to see your fake giant when they should be come to see mine." The whole court case was thrown out, and this is where the famous phrase comes from, and it was actually the prosecutor who said this: "There's a sucker born every minute." Okay, that's where that phrase comes from that whole event. But that guy, P.T. Barnum, went on to create the American circus as we know it today at the age of 60. Retired, bored, decided I'm going to get involved in so I'm going to get involved in circuses. Teamed up with some guy who had his traveling circus on a railroad, brought all of his crazy freak shows with him. He created freak shows. He's the one who got people who had weird disabilities and deformities into his museum.
Yeah.
He got them all together and said, "We're going to join the circus now. We're going to make money traveling around and showing you off to everybody. We're going to attach to this circus over here, and we're going to be part of it as the freak show, And
See, it's never too late. Even if you're in your 60s, you too can totally pull the wool over everybody's eyes.
But he is a member of the Odd Fellows, which is a Freemason offshoot. Okay, and
Yeah.
other members of the Odd Fellows you may recognize are Ulysses S. Grant, Charlie Chaplin. Who else have we got? Albert Pike, the famous 33rd degree Freemason who wrote Morals and Dogma. Many U.S. presidents and senators and lawmen were all members of the Odd Fellows as well.
Hey, you keep America out of your mouth. I'm just kidding.
King George the Fourth was a member of the Odd Fellows as well.
Yeah.
This is not a low-level fraternity. This is a secret
No,
society,
it's high level for sure.
And P.T. Barnum was a member of that too, and he got involved with the circuses, and he invented the freak show, which got to go along with it. And then he eventually, the Ringling Brothers also got involved, and they were rich wealthy businessmen, all Freemasons, members of the Baraboo Lodge number 37. Obviously P.T. Barnum as well, who they teamed up with, member of the Odd Fellows.
Who was Bailey then? Because
Bailey actually wasn't a member of any fraternity, but he was also just a very rich man at the time. But you'll find Freemasons kind of got involved during that time heavily. They kind of started to usurp the circus, if you get what I mean, and really start to get themselves in there. And you'll find the Joseph Grimaldi clown was pretty much a standard in these circuses by that time. And you find the clown was just there kind of in between moments when the scene were changing. The clown will come out and do some juggling or tightrope walking. But what is the clown but not a perfect symbol for their gods? You know what I mean? I think the Freemasons saw an opportunity here, and they saw like, okay, so we've got something over here in this business model that actually looks like our gods, the things we venerate and channel and worship, the clown, the Nephilim, they're kind of in this. So could we use this to make giant rituals on a grand scale without the public realizing it, involving the Nephilim visages, but people see them as clowns? And that's exactly what they did. They joined together and they created a show. 10 circuses got involved for this, all Freemason run, okay? And they make one giant show, one giant spectacle called King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, okay? And it was just an epic show, and everything about it, the set designs, the costumes, all the everything was created by Freemason owned affiliated companies. The same companies who made the costumes for the lodges and their rituals made all the costumes for this show. It was all connected to Freemasonry through and through. And it even says, I've got the receipts, this was their way of taking the ritual out of the lodge and putting it on a huge scale never before seen.
Very much an Abramovich statement, Marina Abramovich. Like, what I do in public is art, but this in private is a ritual, is what she said.
Yeah.
And so it's like in your face. And taking, you said there's a lot of push and connections with clowns in Hollywood, in entertainment in general.
Mhm.
I mean, this has been going on historically. Right now, if you think of entertainment, I mean, it's Hollywood. I mean, that this is the obvious connection here. But you think, have you ever thought of, or maybe mentioned about, the concepts of clowns and what they can represent, and how a lot of celebrities' careers have either started or ended with a humiliation ritual, which is another aspect of a clown.
Yeah.
Is, they're meant to be intentionally humiliated in public sometimes. I mean, the phrase we use it, that fool's a clown. Like, this is, it's meant to insult somebody, and I believe I've seen that quite a bit. And I think that concept of being ritualistically a clown in public, there's something there where they just have to either um, throw you under the bus for something that they have on you, or if you want to grow big, you gotta be a public clown for this, and then go from there. Have you ever kind of considered that sort of connection with clowns and Hollywood and people being intentionally humiliated in public?
Humiliation rituals have always been done throughout secret societies. It's just their way of keeping the members in line, essentially,
Right.
and also to see whether or not they're on their side. The secret is, this is the ultimate secret for show business and for music as well. If you want to be famous, if you want to make it to the very top, start dressing like a clown. Start dressing yourself in ways that represent the Nephilim more readily. Psychedelic and color yourself up. Wear crazy colored makeup and outrageous design clothing and dehumanizing images and visages. The more colorful, the better. If you present yourself as that kind of character, you will be elevated to the top. Okay, and it's not by virtue of your talent, it's because you're already readily predisposed to representing yourself in a way that's demonic, and therefore you can, as an idol, encourage others to emulate you and therefore channel the demons themselves by dressing more clownish. The whole agenda right now, especially in the past 10 years, is to get the general population to not only empathize with the demonic clown, aka Joaquin Phoenix's version of the Joker. Okay, so they've introduced the evil clown over the past 3 decades through it, and obviously all the murderous clowns and all the horrible clowns, and now they're sympathizing with the devil, sympathize with the clown,
Mhm.
identify with the clown. He's just like me. I feel disenfranchised like him too. I'm going to channel my own inner Joker because he's speaking to my struggles, and this is the whole point, is to get people to want to emulate these ancient gods by dressing like them. Now,
Yeah.
if you know the law or not is irrelevant. You're still subject to it. If you dress like something, it has spiritual consequences. Okay,
Mhm.
you will open a portal whether you know it or not. So, and that's the point. That's the point of all of this media, is to, and this sympathization with the clown, getting your idols to dress like clowns. All pop stars, the most famous of them, had pale white skin and red hair, and has clowned themselves up as much as possible. People like, I don't know, David Bowie or Kiss, for example, even Cyndi Lauper. You know what I mean? If you think of it, all throughout history for decades, this has been going on for a long, long time. Just look at it. The most psychedelic, clownish-looking one gets to the top. Okay, and that's not an accident. It's just to get the agenda's always the same. Get the public to dress like clowns. That's it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Make it popular, put it out there. My wife is very sensitive to this. She absolutely hates clowns. Very much can't stand them. It always creeps her out. And my wife is a bit more sensitive to some of this sort of spiritual aspect to things. And so she sees that she's just totally thrown off by it. And I feel like, again, there's more iterations of this. I wanted to bring this up and kind of show this here. Have you seen the series One Piece on Netflix?
I've never been much into One Piece, but I've seen. I know what you're talking about. I've seen this image. I don't know much about the character or anything. So fill me in. Who is this character? What's going on here?
Yeah. So I've added spoilers, the spoiler banner to the stream, just in case you're so. Oh, I'm meaning to see that. So this is a character villain. Obviously, you never have again. You never really have a clown that's not a villain.
Mhm.
But Buggy, the pirate, he's very sensitive about his nose. That's his real nose.
Mhm.
He talks about that's his real nose, and he gets really angry and all stuff. But he has this ability to be able to be cut into pieces and reassemble.
Hmm.
And as my wife has said, like she saw that and she just left the room when that popped up. She's like, I can't stand this. Just thinking about it, that idea of cutting yourself or allowing yourself to be cut, and then he reassembles and can be cut again. That again, kind of that connecting with some of these really terrible practices. There are people who are susceptible to these types of things that's what they feel, that they're drawn to those types of things, and that's even captured with the account with Elijah and the prophets of Baal, the cutting.
Mhm.
It's described in other places in Scripture as far as cutting and interaction with the blood, and obviously uh, sort of ties into different rituals and different things. And it's interesting because it's never presented like this is a great thing, but
Yeah.
it's there. It becomes a part of the sort of the story, is sort of part of the narrative.
Yeah, there's many things involved with that concept alone, which relates back to the Nephilim perfectly. First of all, the fact that that's his real nose is actually a distinctly Nephilim feature, which I scientifically have an answer for as to why they actually would have had these red noses. Something which is known to people like myself and white people in general is something called the curse of the Celts. It's a specific genetic condition very pale people get, and it's called the curse of the Celts, and it actually involves extreme. It can manifest in many ways. Having high iron in the blood, which I actually suffer from, is one thing from it. But other examples it can manifest in many ways is extreme rosacea, so very white skin with red splotches appearing everywhere to the point where it looks painful. You know what I mean? It's like white skin with polka dots, if you want to look at it like anything, you know. But in extreme cases, it can develop, especially as you age, into something called a rhinophyma, and it's where the nose gets big and red and bulbous, like you saw there. Type it in actually. I want to show good examples of this. Type in rhino, PHYMA, phyma, rhinophyma, and this is what it looks like. It's a real condition, and it's I believe the Nephilim, who are said to have incredibly pale faces and white skin. Very common descriptor of most Nephilim. Everywhere you go, no matter where you are, even in all the veneration rituals, they white the skin up. They end up getting rhinophymas. I think they also have the same condition by virtue of being so incredibly pale. And if you keep scrolling down, you'll get more examples of it looking more like a big bulbous round nose. Like
Yeah.
they get bigger and rounder the more it goes on. Basically, the only way to get rid of it is to literally burn it off with a hot wire to sear it away and resculpt the nose. There's no other way of getting rid of it. It's just the way it is. And I do think the Nephilim would have developed these big bulbous, round noses the older they got. And that character from One Piece is very sensitive about his big, bulbous, naturally red nose that he can't get rid of. That's actually there on his face and isn't just something he's wearing as a prosthetic. You know what I mean? It's a real
Yeah.
feature they had, you know. And also the idea that they could cut and he can heal his body back together. Well, the Nephilim, the Rephaim means healed ones or the healers, or they're very quick to heal, or the undead or the reanimated or the dead ones. That's what Rephaim is relating to. Not easy to kill, very quick regenerators. The Nephilim
Right.
also had that feature. And well, I was talking to Gary Wayne about this, but if you wanted to kill a Nephilim, you had to cut off the head.
Head.
You had to cut off the head. That's what
Right.
David did when he killed Goliath. He took the head off. That's that's what happened when Medusa was killed. The head was
Yeah, and
removed. You know what I mean? It's the only
yeah,
way.
and spoilers again, but he gets his Buggy gets his head cut off, and they just carry him around as a head for a while, and
There you
he's
go.
still alive, still talks. He's still a grotesque character that way. But so again, all these different pieces they're thrown into, I think, pop culture to where that's then approachable. Oh yeah, that's right. That's from that story, that thing. To where then when you hear these other accounts or these other stories, you're almost prepared for it.
Hmm.
Right. Yeah, but it brings to light a lot of reasons why even historically a lot of human beings were beheaded. It's because if you dig a little, some of those people are even believed to be connected to gods, and they're like, well, just in case,
Yeah.
we gotta fully decapitate this person. Even biblical characters like John the Baptist and things like that,
Hmm.
because we're like, we don't want this person coming back to life, so we got to make
Yeah.
sure and decapitate them.
I mean, like I said, dressing. Like I said, the one thing I wanted to talk about, which I never get a chance to, is that the musicians use it the most. They're the ones in the entertainment industry still using this costume to gain power. Channeling a demon comes with benefits. That why you think these other cultures do it? They gain power from them. Okay, they gain skills they may not otherwise have. The ability to heal incredibly quickly and not be cut by knives is another one. You'll find in a lot of these rituals, even in India, the thing called the Theum as well, and even in North, sorry, in South Korea, they have the Madang shamans who also dress with the big psychedelic pink top hat and have like a proper ringmaster look to them along with psychedelic clown dress when they channel the demon in their ritual. And rich men pay for this, by the way. That's how they make their money, for them to come to their house and do one of these rituals. It's expected that they will cut themselves with knives and not bleed. They have to see that happening. That's how they know the possession has been successful. Okay, so it's an expected part of the ritual. They have these huge, weird, horrible looking curved knives, and they cut themselves. Okay, and they don't bleed. They don't get cut.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I,
if they fail doing that, then they haven't truly been possessed. They're not truly a Madang. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And this is
no,
it's another fascinating point about the Madangs, which I think is relevant to modern media as well. These shamans are predominantly women, but some men are as well. They all say, I didn't want to be a Madang. I just suffered extreme trauma and now the spirits come to me. And now I have to be one. And I have the ability for them to come into me so readily and easily. But they've all experienced something horrific. The loss of their children right in front of their eyes in a horrible way, let's say, or something horrible. They've experienced some dramatic, like mind shattering trauma. And now they've become Madangs, these shamans who channel spirits.
I think
And
that's the same with modern people that play clowns as a job. They're like, dude, this is not what I wanted to do. But the
yeah,
clown,
yeah.
um,
Well, I think trauma being linked explicitly with clowns is not really an uncommon thing. It's well, extreme depression as well, and these type of things. I mean, Robin Williams killed himself, and he was a clown for a living. You know what I mean? And um, who played? Sorry, I don't know why I'm forgetting his name, but the guy who played the Joker, who died, what's his name again? The brains.
Heath Ledger.
Yeah, Heath Ledger. You know what I mean? Like, and I saw this funny video not long, which came out like years ago, just after his death, of Jack Nicholson being asked about his death. Have you heard about his death? Have you heard he's died? He's like, what? He's dead? Yeah, yeah, just this afternoon. And he went, I warned him, and just walks
Yeah,
off. And it's kind of
yeah,
like he warned him about
yeah.
channeling and the
But
clown. You know what
but
I mean? It's
he warned them, but also he had just finished or didn't get to finish that movie, The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus.
Mhm.
And in that movie, I mean, there was like a lot of like gesture like hangman iconography going on where I mean, he showed himself to be, hung himself, killed there in the movie. And they chose two other occult actors to finish the movie, like Johnny Depp and I believe, what was it? I forgot his name. But yeah, there was a lot of weird stuff. I mean, third eye, very obvious Masonic, black and white stuff going on in that movie. And then that's when he died. But I was like, yeah, man, something's going on with this. And I was hoping that didn't happen also to Joaquin, because I think an important thing to bring up before I forget it is that what was happening in the background, like sociologically and politically, is important to figure out. When you see a clown character, you want to know what's happening in the background, because there's a change that's gonna happen. There's a current state of things, and there's gonna be a drastic change. And I believe the clown is like that figure where I am the bringer of that change. I am the bringer of chaos. because in Joker and Joaquin Phoenix, if you pay attention to the background, it's right before all of the riots in 2020 and all that stuff. But that's what happened in the movie 2019 when it came out. The Joker, there was a conservative political party in charge in the movie. There was a conservative political party in charge in America, and it was just like this thing that was happening. Like the background really foreshadowed what was about to happen in 2020. And sure enough, all of the riots happened. It was like a huge thing. There was this rise to overthrow the conservative party in charge and things like that. And everything that I saw happening, I thought to myself while I was having, I'm like, I just saw this in the movie last year. Like this is exactly what's going on in the Joaquin Phoenix Joker. So I feel like it's important to pay attention. Whatever clown you're watching in any show or whatever movie, whatever, pay attention to what's happening in the background, because it's very likely that is the symbol of change or the symbol of chaos to bring in.
Well, this is what I noticed. If clowns are involved, it means it's a symbol. It represents the Nephilim. I've given you the clue now. If there's a clown involved, it's a symbol for the Nephilim to the initiated. So to have the demonic Nephilim who used to be kings and rulers who want to come back to our realm as the main protagonist in a film about social chaos, they're telling you something. Who's the driving force behind this, really? And also, showing that film at that time likely encouraged people to riot and rebel. Do you know what I mean? It's all about the programming, you got to be careful. Yeah. So go ahead.
Tending over to the people with mental disorders, and because that's huge now, right? Everyone has emotional disorders, everyone has mental disorders. And I mean, God bless you, you came out of the world of the DMT, but right now that is what's growing so much, is microdosing and going into this psychedelic trips. I follow a lot of motivational speakers, and then they talk about God, and you're like, oh great, we got another one in the kingdom. But then they go down this like, oh, I found God through it's a very general term for God, and they're like in this DMT trip, and ayahuasca is the way to go, or things like that. And so I feel like that is the clown business behind all of this stuff, is this version of spiritualities being presented to us, and I don't think it's a coincidence. So I'm glad that you got out of that stuff, and you gave yourself over to God, and
yeah, I found God in spite of the psychedelic experience. I mean, don't get me wrong, the psychedelic experience showed me there's a spirit realm. It gave that certainly was a clue, like, okay, so everything I see isn't what it seems, clearly, I've seen it with my own eyes now. That was enough to get me questioning spiritual concepts, and to sort of get the ball rolling and thinking. But I didn't find God in the DMT realm, like a lot of people claim to find, after the experiences. DMT showed me what God had created. I went looking for God afterwards, and I found it through Jesus Christ and the Gospels and the Bible. Okay, and what Jesus Christ did, and what God's real plan for is. I don't believe the DMT realm is a special place. I believe that's the trick. Actually, I think that's where the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim are. I think the DMT realm is our world right here, right now. I don't think it's a separate place from us. I think it's linked explicitly with us. It's the underside of the carpet. It's the warp to the woof. It's the head. It's the head to the tails. It's this world. It cannot exist. Our world will not exist without the DMT realm or the astral realm, and the astral realm wouldn't exist without this one. It's I consider the astral realm not a higher level. It's like the plumbing behind the scenes that makes this world happen. It's the matrix coding, if you want to go all Gnostic about it, that projects this world, okay? And they're stuck in the walls, in the behind the scenes, they're stuck in a place where there are no embodied forms. They're in hell, essentially, because they hunger and thirst to have desires and wants and needs that they used to have when they had a body that they cannot fulfill. Because they don't have senses, they don't have fingers, a mouth, a nose, ears, a vessel. We are the prize. Where we are is the place to be. This is where it's happening. This is God's plan for us. This is where we should be. This is where we can have a life, experiences, be loved, laugh, enjoy, taste, and have all the God blessed given things that God created for us to have is right here, right now, in this realm. But the trick is to make us think these DMT trippers, they're going to a special place that's better than this one, and you need to figure out how to stay there permanently or something. But if you stayed there you're lucky you get to come back after 10 minutes. But if you stayed there permanently, you would go insane. And I do think those Nephilim creatures are losing their minds, and they have lost it and probably become wide grinning, manic, bulging eyed, laughing Joker characters by virtue of being stuck in this perpetual hell for eternity, disembodied, unable to get away from each other because they're all blending into one each other, in this weird disembodied state, like a hive mind Borg situation in the ether. They are in hell. And we get to have an identity, a personality, a body, a vessel. That's where possession comes into it. That's why they possess us, because they live vicariously through our senses. That's the point.
That is the description of judgment given in the book of Enoch when God judges these watchers for doing what they did. And after the destruction of the Nephilim, the disembodied spirits, they're in this dry realm. And it makes sense that when you watch these movies, like Conjuring and all these famous movies, or people talking to the other side or their family members, there's always these like evil undead or these evil dead spirits that want to possess you because they want to experience the satiation of their thirst of everything we experience in human beings. Like, I mean, I think people forget, even though we're not what we used to be in the Garden of Eden, we still were the beings that were able to connect to the entire realm that existed, both spiritual and physical. We had this ability that probably they didn't have because they were created spiritual beings, and so it makes sense that they would crave it and be like, hey, that's really cool, let's make our own physical beings that we can live through and things like that. And so it really does connect to everything that we understand from the Bible. So it's not far fetched or anything. Just study your Bible a little bit and you'll understand, like, we're not saying anything crazy here. I mean, we're just saying that the powers that be, the principalities, are still at work, and you're in the midst of this battle, this war, this spiritual war, even if it's like you're watching a movie, you're listening to a song or whatever it is. It's all over the place, right? Matt, looks like you had an idea. You need to share something there.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go back just a step or two just to kind of connect maybe some other things. But there's this, here, let me share it here so you can see for the YouTube audience here, the Fool tarot card, which I think, honestly, a lot of tarot stuff is becoming really popular. There are a lot of people who are looking into it, a lot of these different things. But there's a couple connections here. So you have the Fool. It's numbered 0, the first card, which is interesting. You start with the Fool, but it is connected with the Jester, and even if you notice here, it'll say the Madman, the Beggar. But I thought this was interesting, maybe related to the word checkmate in relation to the original use of the tarot cards for gaming purposes. So this was checkmate. So it's interesting that concept of checkmate, which means you won, is connected with the Fool and is continuing to be used. And if you look at this medieval image here of the Fool, it looks like that wild man with a club. Like, these different connections seem to all be pulling together. Wherever you find them, these things are all connected in. So you have that white dress, that wild man dress, and also here you have the very flowery, psychedelic looking sort of image of the Fool. And to connect it to scripture, we have Psalm 14:1. The fool says in their heart that there is no God. That also that feels like a very checkmate kind of statement. There is no God. Boom. We are what there is. That's it. These different pieces and concepts all seem to all fold into each other, and it looks like they're even in scripture. Psalm 14:1 points out the Fool says this, and there's a lot to be said about the Fool in scripture, in both in Psalm and in Proverbs. So it's these. So in case someone is saying, okay, you guys are all stretching, I think these things they all come together. They all piece together wherever you find them elsewhere, but also in scripture it talks about the Fool and where the Fool goes and what the Fool does. Don't be like the Fool. And it just seems to be these old concepts, right? Nothing new under the sun.
Absolutely. But it's interesting, talking about the full character saying, he says in his heart there is no God. Well, what do the DMT jesters love to tell people when they go to these DMT realms? It's like, oh, stop taking life too seriously. There is no God. You are God. It's the same message.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what they tell people. You're a God. I'm just a reflection of your own collective consciousness. We're all God collectively. We're all just
Age-old lie.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
be like gods. Yeah.
Exactly. It's always the same thing. Now let me possess you. You know what I mean? That's how they and at the end. Absolutely. I mean, the tarot card full. It's not really a side of research I've gone into yet, but it's something I'm going to have to obviously go into. I believe the Joker card was introduced to the 52 deck card as it was originally part of a 22 card deck for a game called Euchre, I think it was. And the Joker was a card that was actually played in that, but it was only introduced to the deck we have today as like an homage to this old game. It even comes with the Joker card from Euchre, that type of thing. That's kind of the deck we have today, but its roots do go way back to ancient China, card playing with the Joker involved. It's been throughout us and it's the wild card. That's always what it's represented as, chaos. It can be anything and nothing and everything at the same time. It's outside of the dimensions of the game, yet you can make it a part of the game if you allow it in. It's symbolically speaking, it encompasses everything in just it's just another symbol, isn't it? What can I say? But it all matches if you want to get really, really philosophical and
To go back to something that Enoch mentioned in the chat earlier, he mentioned about Batman being a Skull and Bones connection there, and yeah, his dad was Skull and Bones, and obviously Batman uh, was in the League of Shadows, which is in itself its own society. But in all of these secret societies, you often know, if you know a little bit about them, which I'm sure you do, but like for our audience, is you always bring order out of chaos, and it's just an ongoing thread. And so to see the Joker, for example, hold that, cover his eye, and then have the Batman Skull and Bones, where and he comes from the League of Shadows, and you hear the Joker's character say, "You complete me. I can't exist without you." He's like, oh, he's all obsessed with them. It's like you have this yin and yang, black and white, has to be a part of it, right? And so those characters, come to life even more. It brings more, I guess, meaning or understanding that there's a lot more to what you're seeing than just a really cool hero and villain. It's more really the fulfillment of order out of chaos and things like that. And if you see the movies, I mean, there's 322 and 47 and all kinds of stuff in those movies, numbers that are very important in that world of the occult. So more of the ritualistic numbers that are done in this Nephilim religion. So I mean, we can go on and on, and it goes on forever. But I had one more question as far as me. Anything else you'd like to mention? We're not trying to stop you or anything. We're at an hour and 40, which is great. We just talk for whenever it is, but we've done some pretty long episodes. But my final thing is before you received Christ. I mean, did someone ever tell you, come to Christ, believe in Jesus, and you were like, no thanks, not right now? And if so, what was your reasoning? Like, did you ever think yourself to go down this path of Christianity? And if you didn't, or I mean, what was your excuse? Like, why weren't you a part of the club before, bro?
I wasn't raised in a Christian environment or a religious environment in any way, and my parents are fully secular. I think as far as spirituality goes, I think my mum is loosely into the idea of horoscopes and would go and see a mystic if it was happening for fun somewhere, but doesn't really think about it. You know what I mean? My dad was his mother, my grandmother was Catholic, but he was never really involved in it. He didn't go to church or anything, and it was just never on me to even think about religion in any way. I was aware that my grandma was a Catholic, but I just thought it was just something my naive, stupid old grandma used to do that I don't think about or care about.
Right.
I went to church with her a couple of times as a kid. Maybe out of morbid curiosity, but also I think because my parents just wanted to go and do something for the afternoon and they left me with her. I don't really know, but I ended up going to a mass, and this old lady fainted in front of me, and she was at the end of the pews, and she hit her head on the armrest of the wooden pew and died in front of me. And it was kind of being quite young, seeing that in a church setting, I think may have set the tone for why I wouldn't want to go down the religious path for a long time. You know, maybe in hindsight, that was the devil trying to do something to keep me away. I don't know. You know, you
Yeah.
can only speculate about these things. The spirit world is a mysterious thing, you know. But for a long time, I was a staunch atheist from then on, really. And I had a lot of friends. I had friends who were also down the scientific, logistic-minded way of being, and I was very much in that proud of being a know-it-all atheist, you know, and I went down that route. It's funny because when I was in high school, you know, we had this thing called RE, which is religious studies, and you didn't have to do it when you got to the last couple of years of high school, which is the age of 15 and 16 for us in England. It's different to you in America. It's 18, isn't it, when you're ending high school?
Yeah.
But when you're ending high school, you have these last 2 years of high school where you get to choose what you study to hone it down a bit more. You know what I mean? To what you're going to go on to do in college and then university. And RE was optional, and I chose not to do it. Um, as an official GCSE. But prior to that, you know, I was good at it. I was actually really good at it because I knew a lot about the Bible to disprove it. You know what I mean? Like I was that kind of atheist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had researched a lot about the Bible because I thought it was ridiculous, and I would write essays for this RE class about how ridiculous it is to believe in God and the Bible because it's so full of contradictions and murder. God's a murderer and all this type of thing. You know, why would he kill all these people with the flood? Who does that? You know what I mean? This doesn't make any sense. And you know, I got good grades from my Christian teacher who could see that, you know, I'd thought a lot about religious concepts more than anyone else had in a class who literally didn't care at all. You know what I mean? So I don't she was so kind to me and patient with me. I look back in hindsight and I'm like, wow, she had the patience of a saint to deal with people like me, you know what I mean? Just constantly putting her views down all the time, but she never penalized me for it, you know what I mean? Even when it came to grading, and you just think about that in hindsight, it's like wow, you know.
No,
But
I definitely would have given you an F for sure. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, this
but
guy's
but I think is thing is I knew the Bible quite well as well. But obviously, I don't think it was one of those, you know your enemy sort of attitudes, you know.
yeah.
And I guess that was me. I was an edgy atheistic teenager. But then when I turned 16, 17, I took salvia, and that changed things. Then I went down the more new age hippie route because I saw some stuff, and I was like, okay, so it's not as black and white, solid, cut and dry as I thought it was. Not everything can just be simply explained with science. What the hell is this? Like, what am I seeing here on Salvia? You know, and that set me off down more of the Gnostic, New Agey type of way. It's like scientism mixed with some kind of weird, out there theosophical type of alchemical thinking to try and get to the bottom of what's going. You know, Gnosticism and alchemical principles start to sink into explain these psychedelic principles that you've come across, these spiritual concepts, astral travel, all this type of stuff. So from the age of like 16 to 24, roughly, I think that's the time period of my life, I was smoking weed every day. And as I got to university for the last 4 years, from the age of like 21 to 24, I was microdosing LSD every day. I was smoking DMT whenever I could get my hands on it. I was taking MDMA every weekend. You know what I mean? I was going hard into exploring these realms while also, you know, going down the Eastern philosophical route of understanding consciousness as one. As the Hindus or the Buddhists would understand it in Eastern principles and understandings. So I became like an Eastern mystic in that respect, raised loosely Catholic, majority atheistic up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
But then, as I discovered the conspiracy world, naturally there's a huge faction which is already inclined to be new agey, spiritualistic, sacred geometry stuff, you know, all that's. So I was naturally inclined to be on their side. I was on that side of conspiracy stuff. I thought all the evils of the world could be explained through that angle. But I started to realize it's actually, am I a part of the new age religion for the new world order? I couldn't quite square that contradiction. I was like, yeah, it's like
I
what?
just, I mean, we mention that on the show all the time. I'm like, dude, if you're red pilled and you're not a Christian, bro, you're like part of the plan. Like,
Yeah,
you're in
this is
the
what I'm
plan.
saying. I couldn't square it. I was like, you know, it sounds a lot like I'm the baddie here. I'm on the wrong side, you know. But
Yeah.
I didn't want to go down the Christian route for reasons I explained there. You know, I'm the anti-Christian guy. I can't do that. I can't humor that angle. But no matter what, I kept researching, at the bottom of each rabbit hole was Jesus Christ and what he did for us and why it was important and why it's important we need to be saved. Now we can't save ourselves, and it kept going back to that point. And I'm like, I don't want to go down that route. No, there has to be another way. And like I said, I did it for so long that I was practically on death's suicidal door because my pride would not let me be open to the idea that I need a savior. I have to do it myself, and then, like I said, I was broken. I literally just cried, God, please help me. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. If you're real, show me. I'm on your side. Let's do it. Whatever. And at the time, I was in a bathtub and I went under the water, and then I think I baptized myself, and I kind of just shot up out of the bath, rush of energy to the chest, ran to the window, panting like, what the hell was that? And my life has never been the same ever since. Yeah.
You even self-baptized.
I think I didn't know that was only afterwards I realized okay, I think that's what happened, because it was a supernatural moment. I can only explain it as such, and
no, and I mean,
yeah,
maybe, sorry, my mind, of course, is always in the fringe. I mean, it's amazing to me that God called you in the midst of all of that darkness and what is known in the world of Hollywood as a ritual. you you know you perform the same thing, but as something for salvation and not for something that is evil, which is like a water bathtub ritual, which is often announced and stuff like that. But I just love how God can turn those things around. You know what I mean? Like the context matters, right? It turns it into something amazing.
Well, you have to understand, for context, I hadn't had a bath since I was like a very young boy. I'd only lived in places that had shower cubicles. So it was actually my first bath.
There you go, even more.
In a hotel room at a stag do for my brother-in-law at the time. So I was removed from anywhere normal. I was in a completely different city from where I normally would be.
Real quick, what does a stag do?
It's a bachelor party, I think you call them.
Okay, there you go. I was like, I just gotta make sure. I don't have no idea.
Yeah, you call them bachelor parties, don't you? Yeah.
I'm Mexican, so that one flew right over my head.
Sorry, that's it's a British term for a bachelor's party. It was a whole weekend affair. We went for a party for a weekend. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Mav, any final thoughts here, or anything you'd like to get out?
I know, just before we have a guest on, I was kind of check out some of the other interviews that have been done just to kind of see what's going on. You had mentioned that you're doing a little study in sort of the South Pacific, Polynesian type of sort of area of the world.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wanted to kind of share on any of those things? Any stuff that's coming up? Can you give us an exclusive?
Okay, so I've just recently boxed off an episode on that entire region and how there's a common demonic thread of their representations of the Nephilim, and they all seem to look the same with slight minor variations. And I've used that as an example of where the modern clown in the West is based off of, as I explained earlier. So that whole revelation I gave you about Joseph Grimoldi's costume becoming this demon modeled after the Indian Rakshasa, well, I explore the Rakshasa and the many demonic forms it comes in all throughout the Indic regions where Hinduism has had its take, but then I have another episode which goes into Papua New Guinea, which is just next to it, which has their own very raw primal version of venerations. The cannibalistic tribes, these are tribes that still eat people, and the way they dress is really scarily clownish in a very muddied up way. They have like red reeds for hair, and it's really weird. And they have white face paint with red noses and dead black eyes, and it's so bizarre. And they line pathways with skulls and all these other things like them.
You mentioned sticking out of the tongue, and in one of those things as well, which piqued my interest too, because that is have spent a significant amount of time in New Zealand.
The haka.
The Maori culture, those type of things, sticking out the tongue, the showing the white of the eyes, very big as far as the warrior presentation, and like you mentioned, the haka and some of these other representation.
It's not
So
just
that
it's not
tongue
just
sticking
there.
out thing.
It's not just there. It's obviously it's in the Hindu. Is many of the gods stick the tongue out as well. But if you even go to the Americas and the Aztecs, you know, in the center of the calendar is an entity with its tongue sticking out. The Gorgon, for example, in Greek mythology, always has its tongue sticking out as well. It's all over the place. It's a very common way of depicting
And
these entities.
now all our girls on Instagram.
Yeah.
It even says
Instagram.
it even says in the Bible. I can't remember the passage right now
Mhm.
exactly. But it says, "To whom do you stick out your tongue?" You know, like
Yeah.
this mocking attitude. Why do you know? And it's a veneration again of these Joker like. Because the thing is, this is another thing people don't realize. You know, I'm saying they looked like clowns. They actually did act like clowns as well. They were very irreverent towards existence. They were very brutal towards humanity in a cruel, humorous way. And anywhere you see them where they're described, where they interacted with humans, they were like malevolent jokers. They played pranks on people that were just awfully cruel that they thought were hilarious. Like that, it's really and there's stories from North America, for example, the Duwamish tribe. I've mentioned this one a few times. That had to deal with this cannibalistic red-haired giant, pale-skinned giant across the river, you know, and they would always come over and just start like messing with them, like taking washing off the line and stuff like that, or putting things on top of really high trees that they knew the humans couldn't reach that they needed. You know what I mean? Just for,
Yeah.
they would join in with their night parties and kind of like they would tell jokes that would make the humans blush. Like, don't forget these are giants with incredibly large genitals. You know what I mean? And they were probably like doing stuff with them in front of people, and they knew the humans could do nothing about it because they're giants. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it's kind
Yeah.
of this is the thing though. Once the humans stood up to them, the giants could not stand the thought that the humans dared to stand up to them, and they ripped all the heads off the young men, threw bodies in the air, and let them fall to the ground and splatter everywhere. Just decimated the entire tribe then and there as soon as they decided to stand up to them. Just with words as well. Just say, stop doing this. We don't want you to do this to us. What? How dare you say that? You know, and let me kill every last one of your young men and leave the women behind to tell the story and never recover. You know what I mean? It's kind of, and but
It's funny.
yeah.
It's funny because very early in the show we mentioned about extra biblical material, and there's a huge conspiracy there that a lot of stuff that we consider mythological is actually historical accounts of a lot of these people in Europe and Ireland and the UK. Everyone has stories of these freakish characters that they used to live with, and they're either giants or cyclopsy or just and we're just like, oh, that's just ancient mythology of their past, and we just write it off and we just kind of buy the narrative. And obviously we don't do that on this show, and we understand that we humans kind of lived amongst these characters all of the time. So for me, when they say return of the Nephilim, I'm like, oh, so return to how things were before. Like that's what it was. That's how it was before. I think there's a preparation to go back into that world again for sure, and that's why we see it so much within our media. There's a what's called social engineering happening at all times for sure. So this is the time where it's like, oh man, this is an interesting time to live. I think before I hit my 50 years of age, which is only now 12 years from now, um, is going to be very interesting. It's going to be very interesting, and uh, I don't know. I'm kind of excited. Maybe I'm maybe maybe I'm making it too fun in my head, but I'm just kind of like, let's see what it's like, man. Go to work and I'm working alongside a clown, literal like Nephilim creature here. I don't think
I
that's
imagine they're going to manifest more through people than literally, because they are disembodied at the end of the day. I do think the whole transhumanist agenda. This is a whole other show, though. But I do think I think they are attempting to build vessels which could
Oh, yeah.
then house these once ancient invincible giant gods, and what better than to give them an invincible robot body, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it'll be I do think there's agendas to bring them back here. I think they're working on many ways.
that in my
You know,
opinion, alien abductions.
yeah.
Taking or aliens taking people, and possibly messing with our DNA so they can create meat
Yeah.
suits for them to live in.
I mean, it's believed that just after the flood, people think a lot of these half human, half animal hybrids that were created was an attempt to create bodies that could inhabit the Nephilim more readily. So you'd make like like a mermaid, for example. That was
Yeah.
that was created by mankind and the angels by genetically engineering humans with animals to create some kind of hybrid creature, so the spirits of the now dead giants can inhabit it. You know what I mean? There's like,
Right.
and it's possible they're doing that right now. We're messing with cloning and hybridization right now. It's possible that they're just going to do it through the channeling means by making people so open to possession that they get fully taken over by dressing like clowns, dehumanizing themselves, fully rejecting God, leaving the Holy Spirit out of it, completely remove Jesus from the equation so they can't defend themselves. There's that long-term game always in play, I think. And
Yeah.
obviously that always gives demons a bit of fun to possess us in the meantime before they get their permanent body back. The transhumanist agenda to build the perfect mechanical vessel, the AI agenda to build the perfect ethereal brain to go in the
Yeah.
mechanical body, which can inhabit consciousness like the Nephilim. I think they're all working to this end goal of how can we bring them back? How can we get their spirits from that other side of that veil into the physical realm again? You know, and there's many agendas at play to get there. And like you said, who knows how it's going to finally manifest? I don't know, but I've got my eyes on all the options, you know, because I'm not getting caught, yeah, I'm not getting caught off guard, you know. And this the thing, you know, if they look like clowns, be very suspect, all right? Because yeah,
I'll do my
Take
best.
nothing else from this episode. If you
yeah.
see a clown, just keep your head on a swivel.
Yeah, I mean, most people who dress like clowns, to be fair, probably don't know this. They don't know that this is any link whatsoever to what I'm talking about. They're quite naive and innocent to that fact. But like I said, just because you're innocent to it doesn't mean you're not subject to the spiritual principle involved here. You know,
Mhm.
it's we're creating portals when you dress like something that's a spiritual image of something else. You know, you're creating a mirror in this world of something in the spiritual realm. And that mirrors a way for them to get through to the other side. That's how it works. So if they can get people dressing like a clown that reflects an entity that looks like that in the spirit realm, then you're creating a channel. That's what channeling is. You're opening a doorway to the spiritual realm. But we don't necessarily believe that exists in the West. So we're kind of really naive to this serious spiritual principle everywhere else understands really well. But in the West, we don't think that's real. That's just nonsense. That's just fairy tale stuff. It's silly, you know. That's, of course, that's not going to do. It doesn't matter how you dress, but you know. But then you know, you look at the multicolored collective, as I like to call them, this group of extremely liberal leaning people who all seem to have a particular ideology of dehumanization, including mutilation, shall we say, as well, along with, you know, confusion of what it means to be a human being of a certain binary, let's say. You know, all that involved to try and be politically correct as I possibly can without losing any without getting striked. But it's kind of, you know, their logo, their mantra is one of the worst deadly sins, beginning with P. You know what I mean? It's kind of they have a banner and a flag which is extremely colourful, shall we say. You know, they are embodying the spirits of these Nephilim creatures in the way they choose to represent themselves in a physical form. The more colourful and psychedelic you can make yourself to be, the more of a channel you are for these entities that reflect that image in the spirit realm, you know? And it's all there in that movement.
Yeah, that leads down into the fetishes, and then the fetishes are you act like a creature, you act like a dog,
Oh,
you act like, you know what I mean?
it gets
And
creepy, yeah.
yeah, it gets real creepy, but I mean, it's all related to stuff that's been happening for thousands of years. Yet again, nothing new under the sun, as
No,
Mav mentioned earlier. So,
no.
I mean, again, it's impossible for you to be disconnected from the spiritual realm. You are, by design, made to worship something. And even if you are a staunch atheist, you know, you are practicing in some way or another either a God's created order or the manipulated version of it from these Nephilim religions left over from the past. I mean, it's inescapable. You're in the midst of it. The earth itself and our experience of it is spiritual in it of itself. It's not, you cannot escape it. So
Yeah.
I highly suggest you get on the side of the Lord Jesus. All right, man. Well, that's all we got. We got a solid 2 hours. So that's actually longer than most of our episodes we've done lately. In the last at least 15, 20 episodes, they've not been that long. So it's good. I know you have way more to share. So where can people find all of your clown business?
Yeah, I am on YouTube primarily. That's where you'll find all my stuff. I have a channel called Understanding Conspiracy. You can see the name on the screen there if you're watching this on the video. Just go there, subscribe, watch my entire backlog of videos. It's going on for a long time. I've been in the game for a while. There's 43 episodes in a playlist dedicated to the Nephilim clowns alone, but I do talk about a lot of other outlying subjects surrounding it in other videos I called Random Ruminations in another playlist. I have a Tips for Truthers series, which is about how to deal with waking up and learning these things without utterly destroying every relationship you have.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did that because we did episodes called. We had Dr. Michael Davis talking about emotional intelligence, and the reason I did those episodes was for the same reason, because getting down the rabbit hole that I like to call. I always say on the show, if you have dinner with the Mad Hatter for too long, you yourself will go a little crazy. So you
Oh, yeah.
definitely have to approach that a certain way. So I'm actually excited to see that. What is that called again? I'm sorry.
It's just a playlist, a series I do called Tips for Truthers. I release a video every week. I'm up to like 15 tips. I've released one today actually. It's called "Learn When to Shut Up." That's the latest tip. Because we do have a tendency when we're talking to people about this stuff to not stop talking, and it can really make you can see it where their eyes gloss over and they're just not listening anymore.
Yeah.
But you keep talking and you don't stop, and for some reason you don't they don't want to listen anymore, but you keep going and going and going. It's like you need to learn how to stop doing that, and it's
Clearly a struggle for the three of us over 2 hours. We could keep going, I'm sure.
No, but we actually like what we're saying to each other. We listen. When you're talking to a normie, we'll call them, not trying to be cruel, who doesn't know any of this stuff.
The blue pillar.
We can have the tendency to overload them with everything we've learnt, and it's not actually useful. It's not productive. It's not actually they're not listening. And actually you're probably pushing them away rather than bringing them to the truth. And it's all. I go into a lot of things about the psychology behind how people need to receive information and how we go about it the wrong way. And I'm trying to make. I made all the mistakes. I'm just trying to teach new people who have come to the truth not to make the same mistakes we made, and hopefully you might be able to maintain your relationships to some level in life. But it's a tough. A lot of people fight back about a lot of the tips because they don't like what I'm saying sometimes. Because a lot of people think like well, no, they're just idiots. They're sheeple. They don't deserve for me to treat them with any respect. They're the enemy, and it's kind of like I'm trying to say you need to stop thinking like that. It's not healthy. And
I've been there, done that. We have to be humble wherever it is we stand ideologically, our ideas. I mean, otherwise, I find I found it that when I don't speak a lot and people just kind of naturally come to me and ask the questions, and then I'll answer the questions and I'll stay on task. This took a lot of practice, by the way. I answer your question and nothing else. I'm not adding to it. Oh, and then, because I used to do that, and then there's just swamped, and then I kind of defeated the purpose of that conversation. If you're a Christian, we just had an episode. Basil reinforced this thought that I had. It is not your responsibility to save a soul. Okay, you have the information, put it out there, and for whoever's ready, man, those persons have been those seeds, I should say, have been getting watered, and one day they'll sprout, and little by little. But they might land on your video, your information, and it finally clicks. But you don't have to. Very harshly unplug anybody from the matrix. Just that's just not how it works, man. So
tip number 2 is you can't save everyone. So yeah, I know what you mean. We're on the same wavelength. Go watch it. I think you'll enjoy it. Yeah, but that's just another. I mean, primarily when I started the channel, that's what it was. It was like a meta commentary on being a truther, and I was examining the factions involved in the truth community and how they all fight each other and how we need to find a more cohesion if we want to even get to the bottom of all of this. And as time goes on and as I've got a bit older and wiser about the situation, I'm realizing there's actually some factions within the truth movement which are poison that do need to disappear. You know what I mean? It's not that we don't all have a bit of the truth. In fact, some people are specifically out there to make sure we are doomed and they need to stop, but so it's not as easy as let's all come together as it used to be. I've realized this is actually a spiritual war. We are in spiritual warfare, unfortunately, and my hope is to encourage people through example to come to Christ. We're not all crazy weirdos who go to church and preach dogma at people. Some of us are just normal people who see what's going on and would like you to see it too. We're not trying to like, I'm not this is the thing. I don't speak Christianese, as I call it. I'm not. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't raised in the church, so I don't come across in a way people would expect a Christian to come across, and I think it's actually helping people come across, in
I
a
think
way.
there's a time and a place. Some of my fellow church friends might disagree with me. They think it's kind of hypocrisy, but I don't agree. I feel when Paul said you need to be like a Roman, and fit in with people a little bit, but also be distinguished morally and
Yeah.
biblically. So, but I mean, as far as having conversations with people, I find it easier to just be a little bit more chill. I think they take a lot of Christians think just being extra Christian is being the light or the salt of the earth, and I'm like, no, you're just being kind of annoying. But
This
that's
is
just my opinion, though.
again,
Sorry. I mean, if anybody disagrees with me out there,
each to their own. That's what I mean. What works for some doesn't work for others.
I mean, yeah,
You know.
but I mean, in the end, God fixes it anyways, and reaches out to those people he needs to reach out to. So I'm not saying stop what you're doing, do whatever. God's going to use whatever he's going to. I mean, it doesn't matter. You're an instrument of God, and I'm being used in this world of podcasting and having conversations with people about weird subjects online, and people get blessed by it. I've had some really amazing emails, and that's just what we do. We're doing our part in the body of Christ, and so everyone else keep on keeping on whatever you're doing, as long as it's for Jesus, even if it's a mistaken approach. Guess what? Holy Spirit's still going to use it. So, because it doesn't depend on us, it's all on God, and we just got to do our job and say yes to the call. All right, Mav, anything else you got? I got to land this plane, brother.
No.
Let's land it.
All right,
been a
cool.
pleasure.
It's been so good to have you. You guys know where to find us, firetheftradio.com. Please try and stream the show over there. Also, iTunes and Spotify specifically is growing so fast since we put it barely a few months ago. I don't know why I didn't do that sooner, but you can find us anywhere they stream podcasts. But if you're interested in interacting with folks or myself, you can do it through the website, firetheftradio.com or firetheftradio@gmail.com. If you have any questions, concerns, hate mail, send it to me, baby. And we'll read it, and it's no problem with us. We're not very hateful over here at all. So we just, we consider all of your complaints, even if you're not a member of the show or help in any way. I'm trying to people that complain the most, interestingly enough. And so it's always the people that never help, or they're just like, I don't like how he speaks, or he babbles on, or this and that. And I'm like, dude, I'm a normal. But if you're look at the back of my room right now, it's a mess, man. I just got a baby. I got a crib over there. I'm a regular guy here in Southern California, and like I said, I'm responding to a call that I feel is a ministry God has given me, and we're here, man, just having good conversations, and God is doing His thing. So, other than that YouTube channel, is that all you got? You don't have a website, anything else?
You can follow me on Instagram under Paul Anthony Stobbs, but I don't really post on there much. But people do communicate with me through that. So that's one.
Is that your photography that I saw?
Mainly by photography. That's what it used to be.
Nice.
I've integrated it into this thing I do now as well.
Yeah, I saw that. It's like the first few posts is clown business, and then everything else is really nice photography. So
yeah, well, I am a photographer as a business. That's what I do to make money aside from YouTube and everything. But yeah, YouTube is where you find me. You can find me on Twitter. I post random stuff on there sometimes, just because people are. The clown world is so apparent on there. I can't help but find a gold mine of examples. So I do post on stuff on that. So you can find me on Twitter under UConspiracy. You can find me on Instagram under Paul Anthony Stobbs. I'm on Patreon as well. I'm writing the book for this currently. The Nephilim Look Like Clowns. There's a GoFundMe for that, which you can find on my channel. And I'm regularly posting snippets of the book on Patreon as well and on the GoFundMe. So there's loads of stuff on there. But yeah, YouTube is my home base. That's where you'll find me.
Awesome. Cool. That's all we got, folks. Again, thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to spread the fire. Later.